Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at a couple McFarlane Toys action figures. These are from 1997, and these were from Series 8 of the Spawn line. And so what we're looking at here is Gatekeeper and Curse of the Spawn from that particular series. And these are quite old, and they don't quite kind of hold up in terms of the kind of articulation you'd expect from an action figure today. But what they lack in articulation, they make up for in terms of the sculpting and everything. So very excited to have these in my collection. Both of these I got from a fellow collector who was trying to thin out his collection a little bit. So he basically gave me these figures just to sort of get rid of them. And I was very happy to take them on because I think they're really just fantastic in terms of the overall sculpting. So here on the Gatekeeper, I am missing one of the accessories that was supposed to come with this. I believe there's one other sword that comes with this. And this headpiece is removable, so you can see what the head sculpt looks like underneath there. And very cool. The sculpting on these is pretty impressive, and there's lots and lots of detail on these. And this does include one piece of cloth goods as well. So, but in terms of articulation, they're a little bit lacking. You can see he comes with this, and then there was another sword that came with this, which I no longer have. But you can see there's a lot of pivot joints on these. You can see there's a pivot joint there at the bicep, and then there's nothing at the elbow, and then there's a pivot joint at the shoulder. Here he's got one at the shoulder, and a joint at the elbow on here. And there's a pivot here at the waist, pivot at the head. There's a pivot at the hip, and also there's a joint here, and no joint here. So yeah, sort of kind of limited in terms of the articulation, but again, in terms of looking at all the sculpting and everything, I think it looks great. This gun is also not removable; it's molded on there. So you know, if this were a modern action figure, chances are, you know, these kinds of accessories like a gun and a holster would actually be removable. So, but in 1997, that wasn't always the case. Not every action figure line had the kind of articulation that you would expect now. These also have a wrist pivot as well. And you can see there's a little notch right there, which actually helps him hold some of the weapons because the grip is kind of loose on that. So it notches into a little notch here on the handle of this sword. So yeah, in a lot of cases, they would do that sort of to, you know, help the action figure kind of hold the weapon. Whereas today, they'd probably just make it so that it fit in there without having to have that notch. So cool figure, and also came with this accessory too, just kind of staff, I guess. So here we have Curse of the Spawn, and as you can see, he comes with two different accessories. You can see this blade in this hand, which sort of notches into his fingers. As you can see, his fingers are kind of poking through the various holes there. And then he also comes with this large sort of axe, which is pretty oversized, but very cool in terms of all the detail and so forth on that. This one has a little bit better in terms of articulation than the Gatekeeper. So I can show you some of the features on this. You get a pivot at the head. You can see a pivot at the waist. So there's a pivot joint at the shoulder and also articulation at the elbow. Also a pivot joint at the wrist. So that's kind of nice. And then at the knees, he also gets a knee bend there. And then at the ankle, there's also some articulation there. But again, it's not a lot. It's pretty limited by comparison to some of the other ones. And on the back, there's this little articulated point, which allows you to sort of like push these up and down like that. So these sort of bone type wings kind of like articulate up. Anyway, cool looking figure. I really love the head sculpt on this and all the sort of unique sculpting on the figure itself. I just think it looks amazing. So yeah, pretty happy to have this in my collection. Lots and lots of detail on this. And this is one of the things that made McFarlane Toys sort of unique, both back in the day and also currently, is that they really go to town in terms of the sculpting on these action figures. So It's one thing I could say about the modern McFarlane figures is that they definitely hold true to that. So I can show you an example of like what McFarlane toys are like now. So I can bring in my Gunslinger Spawn, and you can see a lot of the newer figures are done at a much larger scale, and the articulation is much more sophisticated than these ones. These ones are sort of more 6-inch scale, and then this one is, I'd say that's probably more like 8-inch scale. So you can see there's been sort of a bit of a change in terms of like the kinds of things that they're doing now. But again, in terms of the sculpting and everything, this is very consistent with the modern figures. It's just that the scale is different. But the nice thing about these, because they are more or less the 6-inch scale, they should fit in fine with things like Marvel Legends or Star Wars Black Series, or any of those kinds of figures that are done in that scale. Like G.I. Joe Classified is also done in that scale. So in terms of having Spawn figures that are compatible with some of these other lines of toys, I do recommend, maybe adding some of these ones from the late 1990s into your collection if you want to have interactions between characters like Spawn and some of the other Marvel characters and stuff like that. That's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more reviews of Spawn action figures in the future, think about subscribing to the channel, because I will be covering a lot of the ones that I have that are older ones in my collection from the 1990s, and also occasionally reviewing some of the newer ones as I pick them up. So you can sort of see the difference between some of the newer stuff versus the old stuff. Until next time, I hope you're having a great day, and thanks for watching.